Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today. So of course, it's AEW All Out this weekend, this Sunday in the Now Arena in Chicago, Illinois. So we have a ton of AEW news stories to get into. Obviously, given the events that happened yesterday, we weren't able to talk about AEW yesterday. So basically, we've got yesterday's and today's news all put into one. So it's going to be a big one. It's going to be a big story. Let's start off talking about Daniel Bryan, because of course, it's been rumored that Daniel Bryan will be making his All Elite Wrestling debut this coming Sunday at All Out in Chicago. And this has essentially been confirmed or backed up by another influential source when it comes to AEW. Now, Daniel Bryan, also known as Bryan Danielson, which I think is going to be his name in AEW. Of course, it was his name on the independent wrestling circuit prior to signing with WWE. Bryan Danielson is set to make his AEW debut at Sunday's All Out pay-per-view from the Now Arena near Chicago, Illinois. Now, of course, it was originally reported by Bodyslam.net, who has been very, very close to AEW and AEW news stories regarding Daniel Bryan and CM Punk over the course of the last few months. It was originally reported by Bodyslam.net that Bryan will be signing with AEW and will likely make his debut at the Grand Slam edition of Dynamite on September 22nd in New York City. Now, this was later revised because Bodyslam.net actually then reported that Bryan would be making his AEW debut at All Out this coming Sunday. Now, in an update, the Wrestling Observer newsletter has reported today that multiple AEW sources have confirmed that Bryan's debut is scheduled for All Out in Chicago. It was also noted that, of course, if Bryan doesn't debut on Sunday and we don't see Bryan Danielson, it could be basically a situation where plans have changed. But it is expected right now that Bryan will make his debut in Chicago on Sunday. So, look, this was, again, something we spoke about before when that initial story came out. And I know that I find it funny that some people are still doubting Bodyslam.net because let's be honest here, they've got two massive stories correct. Obviously, they didn't break the CM Punk news. That was broken by Fightful Select, Sean Ross Sapp. But Cassidy Haynes of Bodyslam.net was the first to report that Daniel Bryan had indeed signed with All Elite Wrestling. And it looks like he's right. He was then the first to report that Bryan Danielson will be making his debut at All Out on Sunday. I think he made that report last week. So the fact that he's been the first on several reports now and people are still kind of doubting him, I think is kind of a bit crazy, to be honest with you. But whenever the Wrestling Observer newsletter speaks about AEW, and I know I say this time and time again, but it's so true, when you talk about AEW, when Dave Meltzer is talking about AEW, 99% of the time it's accurate. The reason why it's accurate is because Dave Meltzer is very close with Tony Khan. If Dave Meltzer needs to know anything or wants to publish anything about All Elite Wrestling, he just calls Tony Khan or drops him a message. And there have been certainly instances in the past where stuff or creative plans, whether it's Sting's debut or Jon Moxley's debut with AEW, that hasn't got out in the Observer. Why? For a particular reason. That particular reason being that Tony Khan's probably told Dave Meltzer don't report it, and Dave Meltzer hasn't reported it to stay in favor with Tony Khan going forward. Again, they are friends. Tony Khan used to read the Wrestling Observer newsletter growing up. Dave Meltzer has even, this is kind of weird, but taken credit for some of the booking of AEW because he kind of says, like, see, Tony Khan learned how to book by reading the Observer, so I'm a genius. So when Meltzer is reporting something about AEW, 9 times out of 10 it's accurate because he speaks to Tony Khan. So the fact that the Observer is backing this up says to me we should expect a Bryan Danielson debut at All Out on Sunday. I think we should have expected it anyway once Cassidy Haynes reported it. Obviously, initially, the plan was that Bryan would be making his debut at the Grand Slam edition of Dynamite. The initial report by Cassidy Haynes essentially said that it was moved up out of concern as to what that Grand Slam edition of Dynamite is going to look like in New York City. Of course, as we get towards the end of the year, we move through the fall into winter. There is a concern when it comes to the pandemic about rising cases of coronavirus, especially with this Delta variant. Because of all of that, there is a concern that that Grand Slam edition of Dynamite could end up being postponed. There's got to be proof of vaccination to enter that show now, but certainly there could be mandates and new restrictions added between now and September 22nd. And I think the general feeling is that it's a risk at this point to assume that nothing's going to change between now and then. They just want the moment. They saw how important that CM Punk moment was in Chicago for Rampage, the first dance, and they want to do the same thing for All Out, and they want to do the same thing for Bryan Danielson's AEW debut as well. It also does imply that, again, further surprises are planned later on down the line, that they don't feel the need to stretch it out because other names are coming in. I think one of those names is, of course, going to be Bray Wyatt. There has been rumors about Ric Flair as well. Maybe Adam Cole is going to make his debut on the Grand Slam edition of Dynamite. So I think pieces have been shifted. But it's certainly going to be a massive, massive moment when Bryan does indeed make his debut this coming Sunday at All Out. So I'm very excited. Of course, I'm very excited like anyone else. I'm very excited to see Bryan Danielson in AEW. I've got all my fingers crossed. I've got my fingers crossed that he's going to be coming out to the final countdown like he did in Ring of Honor. Whether or not he will be doing that or that is the case, I don't know. That one is so up for debate right now because of the reported expense associated with the final countdown. I don't know how many mainstream wrestling fans will understand that reference because it was only a Ring of Honor independent circuit thing, and that was quite a long time ago. It's not as widely associated with him as the cult of personality is when it comes to CM Punk. I hope so. I hope they managed to pull that off. Tony Khan's just as a big of a lunatic to pay the money to do it, just to pop himself, let alone, or a small portion of people on social media. But I hope so. I really do hope so. Whether or not that happens, we'll have to wait and see. Let's go and talk about Dynamite on Wednesday. As I mentioned, this would have been spoken about yesterday, but CM Punk did get physical this week on AEW Dynamite. He was out cutting a promo in Chicago. Out came Daniel Garcia in 2.0, who actually attacked Punk, and he sold. He absolutely sold it. It was a 3-on-1 beatdown, and if the Darby Allin and Sting didn't make their way out to the ring, I guess Punk would have been in a lot of trouble. But out came Punk's opponent for Sunday, Darby Allin, and the Stinger himself. They all managed to fight off 2.0 and Daniel Garcia. And then we saw the moment that a lot of people had been waiting for. It was a case of CM Punk hitting the go-to-sleep on Jeff Parker of 2.0. Now, aside from this unconfirmed independent appearance where he actually hit a masked man with a GTS, where he was in a full ninja suit and all that kind of stuff, this is the first time that CM Punk has hit his finisher in over 7 years. Certainly the first time he's hit his finisher on national television in 7 years. So it felt like a big moment, and I pointed this out on social media the day after on Twitter at 365 Wrestle. You can follow me, by the way. I pointed out that CM Punk made a big deal, right? He made a really big deal in his promo and in all of his media appearances, his interviews that he's been doing. He spoke openly about wanting to work with the younger talent. I want to work with the younger talent here in AEW. And the first bit of physicality he has, who does he work with? Who does he get beat down and sell for? Daniel Garcia in 2.0. Daniel Garcia in 2.0 aren't actually working a match at All Out, it would seem, but the fact that they've been kind of involved in this whole CM Punk Darby Allin storyline feels like a big deal. Feels like a really big deal. And for them, they're getting over by proxy. Daniel Garcia is 22, and he's attacking CM Punk on Dynamite, and he's attacking CM Punk and having CM Punk's first physicality back inside of a wrestling ring. It's awesome. It was awesome. It was great. And I think this is what we want to see when it comes to CM Punk going forward. I mentioned it before, the whole Punk, I'm happy to be here and I'm just happy to be in AEW and I'm just enjoying myself and I'm waving to the fans. That's fine, but we need to progress and we need to see a little bit of evolution and we need to see some physicality and we need to, see him at a GTS or a running knee, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, you don't want to give away everything before the pay-per-view on Sunday, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was a great segment and a really enjoyable segment. And it's just great to see Punk back inside of a pro wrestling ring and hitting the GTS once again. It's awesome to see. So I thoroughly enjoyed the segment, it must be said. Speaking of Punk, of course, it's Rampage tonight, the final show before All Out on Sunday. And CM Punk will make his AEW commentary debut tonight on Rampage on TNT. Now, AEW previously announced that Punk would appear live on Rampage, but they've now confirmed that he'll be on commentary for the match between Daniel Garcia and Darby Allin. Of course, Darby Allin's going to be facing Punk this Sunday at All Out. I'm excited for this main event. I'm excited to have Punk on commentary. Punk in pro wrestling commentary was always great. I know he does commentary for MMA, but I think back to Punk doing commentary for Monday Night Raw in late 2010, which was tremendous. It really was tremendous. I can't really describe it. It was just great. It was so great. It was a period of time. Punk was on SmackDown that I think he had an injury and he was switched to Raw for Edge. Like they did a trade and Punk was on commentary with Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler and he was great. He was the best thing on that show. And looking back, those Raws then, we used to complain about those Raws being terrible and just bad writing, all that kind of stuff. Michael Cole, heel character, The Miz being WWE champion, all that kind of stuff. But in reality, compare it to modern day Raw, it was 2 hours and it went by pretty quickly and had CM Punk on commentary. So it wasn't all that bad. So Punk's great on commentary. I don't think he's going to be the same CM Punk on commentary that he was on Monday Night Raw in 2010, but Punk's great behind the mic. I don't know what that announce booth is going to look like. 4 guys is too much anyway, but 5, including CM Punk, no thank you. So maybe Mark Henry takes a step out. Maybe they do an angle when it comes to maybe Chris Jericho and MJF during the show, so it leaves it to like a 3-man booth. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do for that, but 4 is just way too much. Way too much. So I'm interested to see what happens when Punk gets behind the mic tonight on Rampage. There's an update when it comes to Britt Baker, the AEW Women's World Champion, because reportedly she has extended her contract with All Elite Wrestling. AEW Women's World Champion Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, and AEW have agreed on a contract extension, according to F4W Online. Now, Fightful Select was first to report the news, citing AEW sources, but the report did not state the length of the new agreement or the length of the original deal. Now, as noted this week on AEW Dynamite, Baker said that she would have an announcement regarding a free agent signing with AEW. Now, during a backstage interview with Tony Schiavone, she revealed that she was indeed the free agent signing. It was a tongue-in-cheek thing to make people think, is she going to announce Adam Cole's signed with AEW? Because, of course, Cole and Baker are partners in real life. Are they going to do that? And no, it was Britt Baker. Obviously, it's a big deal for AEW. She's the biggest female star they have and one of the biggest stars in general that AEW have, let alone male or female. And it's funny when you look back on Britt Baker and her journey in AEW as someone that was meant to be the face of the women's division, as a babyface, as a smiling babyface, and it just didn't work. Nobody cared. And now she gets some of the biggest reactions when her music hits. It's just a testament to the growth of AEW and a testament to the work of Britt Baker, finding that character, finding what eventually worked for her in AEW. And like I said, now she's one of the biggest stars on the show, and I would hope and assume that this new contract had a significant pay rise. It should, because she, again, is one of the biggest stars on the roster right now. Speaking of Dynamite, we have the ratings for Dynamite this week. Wednesday's live All Out Go Home edition of AEW Dynamite reportedly drew just over 1 million, 1.047 million viewers on TNT, according to ShowBuzz Daily. Now, this is down over 10% from last week's show, which drew 1.172 million viewers for Punk's Dynamite debut. Now, the All Out Go Home show drew a 0.37 rating in the key 1849 demographic this week. This is down over 22% from last week's 0.48 rating. So that's certainly very, very interesting. Of course, Dynamite's episode this week was the 100th episode of Dynamite. It ranked number 1 for the night in the cable top 150 this week. This is the second week in a row that Dynamite has ranked number 1. Dynamite ranked number 32 for the viewership for the night on cable. This is down from the 31 ranking last week. Now, Dynamite this week was up 12.8% from the same week in 2020. The key demo was up just over 2.8% from the same week last year. Now, of course, the 2020 episode went head-to-head with NXT on the USA Network. I think overall, that's probably what they'll be looking at year on year. We're over 12% up, which is significant, of course. Will they be disappointed that it went down? I think they would have hoped they would have been able to continue some momentum heading into All Out. I think this has an effect of last week's show. Last week's show just wasn't very good, despite CM Punk making his Dynamite debut. And this was what was so baffling about it, wasn't it? Is that Punk was making his Dynamite debut, so there was going to be eyeballs on the product, people watching AEW for the first time, and they delivered a bad show, or just a boring show, a show that had just no real substance to it. And everyone sitting at home was kind of scratching their heads saying, this would have been the show to really go balls out and do something quite big, because the people that have been watching AEW for the first time would say, this is great. I can't afford to ever miss this show again. I'm going to continue watching it. And they didn't give that. And maybe that's what we've seen this week, is that 10% of people went, wasn't that great. I enjoyed the Punk bit, but it wasn't that great. I think this week's show was better than the prior week. But again, it would have been a case of, Why didn't you do that the prior week? I don't get that. But it'll be interesting to see the Rampage numbers as we head into All Out. I know some people are going to be going, see, CM Punk doesn't make that much of a difference, all that kind of stuff. Look, they're still consistently getting over 1 million viewers, which they're very happy with. Year on year, they're up over 12% in an industry where it's going down every year. So I think they'll be happy with that. If they can continue that kind of growth year on year, they'll be laughing. Whether or not they can continue it, time will only tell. But it certainly is interesting. You would have hoped, if you're AEW, that going into All Out, you would have had a big number. But I think coming out of it, they'll have an even bigger number with the debut of Bryan Danielson, possibly more, whether it's Ric Flair or Adam Cole, or maybe even both. That's certainly going to be interesting to see as well. Bit of a spoiler warning before our next bit of news, so I'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's the return of Max Caster. Yes, Max Caster has returned to AEW. Now, there was a lot of discussion as to his future with All Elite Wrestling, but Max Caster has made his return to action for AEW. Now, during the Dark tapings this week at the Now Arena in Chicago prior to Dynamite, Caster returned to help Anthony Bowens defeat Griff Garrison. Now, it's interesting to know that Caster did not perform any raps during the return on Wednesday night. The Bowens vs. Garrison match will presumably air Tuesday night on the post-All-Out edition of AEW Dark, but it's not been officially announced as of recording right now. Now, of course, Caster has been out of action since his controversial rap aired on the 100th episode of AEW Dark, which premiered on August 3rd. The rap was quickly edited out of the episode due to a major backlash from fans on social media. It was then reported that Caster had been suspended for 2 months, but he's already back in action less than 1 full month later, putting some doubts into that report. Now, Caster at one point removed all AEW references from his social media profiles. There had been some speculation on the future of the Acclaimed too. But it looks like now everyone is back on the same page once more, even though the AEW/Acclaimed references have not been added back. Maybe he's just waiting until this Dark episode airs. Now, it had been noted that Caster will be performing in Chicago at the Bottom Lounge during All Out Week. His show is scheduled for Thursday, September 2nd at 10 p.m. That was yesterday, of course. The event included a live performance, a Q&A session, and a meet and greet with a $20 general admission tickets sale price. So I don't really know the situation. I'm glad to see him back. I think that, again, him losing his job or him deciding to leave AEW would have been a real shame, because I do think he has potential. I do think he has character and personality. I think that, yes, he was at fault for that issue, but I think a lot of other people were. I think the people editing it were at fault because they didn't catch it. I think people that Caster approved his promo to, that said that was fine, they're at fault too. I think there are a lot of people at fault. So I didn't want to see Max Caster lose his job or never come back, because I thought that would have been ridiculous, to be honest with you. So I'm glad to see that he's back. I'm glad to see that this issue looks to be resolved. And it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. I think the only thing that kind of sticks in my craw a little bit was when he was removing the whole AEW references from his profile and saying, I'm going to have to sell my tights this month and I'm going to be doing appearances during All Out Week. Implies that he was kind of playing up his absence as like an angle, and this isn't a thing to make an angle out of. Just take your lumps, get on with it, and come back, and let's never talk about it again, sort of situation. So that's my kind of only thing. What I would say, let's just move on. That's kind of my feeling of it now. Let's just move on. That was 6 weeks ago, something like that. It's over. It's over. Let's just move on, and let's just never have to talk about this again, because the more you talk about it, the more outrage people will get about it again, and it's just no point. Moving back to All Out, of course, a match that was scheduled for All Out this Sunday was Pac versus Andrade El Idolo, but that match isn't going to happen now. It's been postponed. AEW President Tony Khan announced through his Twitter that Pac versus Andrade El Idolo, originally scheduled for Sunday's All Out pay-per-view, will be postponed to a future episode of AEW Rampage. The Women's Casino Battle Royale that was originally scheduled to be on the buy-in pay-per-view pre-show will now be on the main card. This is what Tony Khan said on Twitter. Quote, "Thank you to all the fans supporting AEW Dynamite live on TNT. The Women's Casino Battle Royale, which was booked on the buy-in, will now be featured on the All Out pay-per-view card. Due to travel issues, Pac versus Andrade El Idolo bout is postponed until a future AEW Rampage." Look, it sucks. Of course it sucks. I think a lot of people, myself included, were really excited for this match, and it was a match that arguably was going to steal the show. Maybe. I mean, it's difficult considering Punk's first match in 7 years is going to be taking place at All Out on Sunday, but it sucks. I don't know what really the travel issues are. There has been a lot of speculation about this, about Possibly Andrade having another match at All Out, possibly having a mystery opponent, which would imply that it's Pac with the travel issues. Reportedly, I saw a report, I don't know how true it is, so I'm almost hesitant to talk about it, but there was a report stating that the reason for Pac's absence is similar to why Sasha Banks was absent from SummerSlam. I don't know that to be the case or not. I really don't know what the issue is, so I'm not going to speculate. Tony Khan said travel issues, then that's just travel issues. We can't really talk about that right now. I would assume, again, given how kind of fluid sometimes these sort of quarantine rules are and self-isolation, and when you travel to another country, if Pac traveled back and forth between Britain and the United States, I don't know, and I don't think it's fair to speculate on unless we hear more about it. So Pac versus Andrade isn't happening. I don't know if a mystery opponent has indeed been confirmed for Andrade yet. We'll have to wait and see. I do want to talk about the Gunn Club turning heel on Dynamite. The Gunn Club turned heel on Wednesday night. Now, Dynamite saw QT Marshall with the Factory call out Paul White ahead of their match on Sunday at All Out. White answered the call, fending off the entire faction with shoulder tackles, chops, and choke slams. Out came Billy Austin and Colton Gunn of the Gunn Club, and they made the save and assisted Paul White once Marshall took a chair from ringside. Marshall attempted to rush to the ring with his new weapon, but Billy Gunn intercepted the chair. Marshall retreated up the ramp before Billy struck White with the chair inside the ring on his, I guess, surgically repaired hip. He had a hip transplant, I think, or something like that, leading to a shocked reaction on the face of the leader of the Factory. Billy then struck White with the chair, this time in the head. I know he got his hand up, all that kind of stuff, and I guess the chair was gimmicked. I still hate chair shots to the head. You can't convince me. And I know people are going to say, oh, well, you know, they gimmick the chair and they're doing it safely, blah, blah, blah. Chair shots to the head. Big no-no. I don't like it. I really don't like it. We know too much about CTE and concussions and all that kind of stuff. It's not the time to be bringing that kind of back. I don't really want to talk about this that much because I don't care. Like, no disrespect to the Gunn Club and Billy Gunn and Colton and what's the other one? Austin. I forget all the Gunn's names. I just don't care. I don't care about Paul White versus QT Marshall. Why QT Marshall is just plastered all over AEW broadcasts. I mean, significant broadcasts like Dynamite and Rampage. I have no idea. It must be very profitable being the friend of Cody Rhodes and helping book the show with Tony Khan or produce the show with Tony Khan, which QT Marshall does. And it's weird. And I think no one's into it. Nobody's into it. And the viewership and the ratings back this up. Social media backs this up. Nobody cares about... I'm content with seeing Paul White in AEW if he's used properly. I like his commentary work. And he's still the big show, right? At the end of the day, he's got a point to prove. And he still does have... There's brand recognition there. So I don't have a problem with that. There's the QT Marshall stuff, the Factory stuff. Who cares? Who cares? Honestly, who cares? Nobody cares. And then when it said that the Gunn Club had turned heel and they attacked the Big Show or Paul White, again, who cares? Who cares? I look, the Gunn Club, I just find myself really struggling to care. That's kind of the issue that I have, that I find myself really struggling to care. Maybe Austin and Colton Gunn eventually will be great, but I find myself struggling to care. I'll be really honest with you. And it's just a case of you've got so many guys on this roster right now, and it just feels like a segment that just belongs on Dark Elevation or something like that. Certainly not on Dynamite, and certainly not leading to a pay-per-view match. Because it feels like, oh, goodness me, we're going to get Billy Gunn versus Paul White inside of an AEW ring in 2021? Seriously? That's kind of my issue with all that. So it's just a case of I saw it and I went, honestly, who cares? Really, who cares? Tony Khan has spoken about the TNT Championship. He did an AEW media call yesterday, and he was asked about the TNT Championship, and whoever asked the question, I don't recall who it was, referred to the TNT Championship as a mid-card championship. Khan then interrupted the journalist and said he did not like that distinction for the bout. He said, quote, "It's not a mid-card championship. The only people that have held the bout are Cody, Brody Lee, rest in peace, Darby Allin, and Miro. I don't consider it, and I'm not booking it like a mid-card championship. I'm looking at it like a top title that stars hold. I will take exception right off the bat. This is the key to a championship that none of the champions have been a stretch. It's in thermodynamics. I'll get there in the end, guys. Thermodynamics. Heat is passed from a warmer body to a cooler body." And he goes on to explain his philosophy when it comes to booking the bout. I know that Tony Khan said that the TNT Championship is not a mid-card championship. I know that Cody Rhodes has said the same thing. And the champions, look, the champions that have held it, I wouldn't say are mid-card champions, but I hate to be the bearer of bad news to Tony Khan and Cody Rhodes, it's a mid-card championship because it's not the World Championship. Unless you are calling this a World Championship, it's not the World Championship. One promotion can only have 2 World Championships if they have different shows, like in WWE. You know, otherwise it just doesn't work. When the brand split was dissolved in WWE in like 2011 or whatever, and they had the WWE Championship and the World Heavyweight Championship, I suppose technically it's counted, or it was counted as a World Championship, but it wasn't a World Championship. It wasn't. The WWE Championship was the premier title. That's how it is. And the TNT Championship, they can try and label it like it's not a mid-card championship because it's on guys that aren't in the mid-card, but let's face it, it kind of is. Cody Rhodes, yeah, he's a main event guy, I guess, in AEW. Brody Lee, I mean, God rest his soul, but, you know, it wasn't in, I guess it technically was in the main event because he challenged Moxley at Double or Nothing, but Darby Allin was in the mid-card, and Miro's in the mid-card as well. The upper mid-card, certainly, and they absolutely can transition to a main event, and it absolutely wouldn't be out of place for them to challenge for the World Championship like it wasn't for Brody Lee, but at the end of the day, it's a mid-card title because you've got a World Championship. And there are certainly talents on that roster that would be more suited to holding the TNT Championship than the World Championship because they're not at that level. And the TNT title helps them get to that level. And whilst I know he takes exception to that, that just is what it is. That ultimately is what it is. And that's it. That's just the case. Anna Jay, of course, returned on Dynamite this week as well. She's been out of action with a shoulder injury, and she is back now on AEW television. Ty Conti picked up a victory over Penelope Ford. After the match, Ford and the Bunny beat down Conti, leading to Anna Jay returning and making the save. Now, Jay helped Conti to her feet as the two embraced to close out the segment. Commentary announced Jay would be competing in Sunday's Casino Women's Battle Royale at All Out. Now, this, of course, is Jay's first appearance on AEW programming since February when she was sidelined with a shoulder injury. Jay underwent surgery for the injury and was estimated to be out of action for between 6 to 12 months, despite potentially being out of action for the remainder of the year. Jay's scheduled return to the ring this Sunday marks a recovery period of just over the minimum expected time schedule. Now, they were a tag team in the AEW Women's Tag Team Cup tournament, the Deadly Draw last summer. They're real-life best friends, so it's great to see Anna Jay back. Look, there's no doubt about it. She's a star. Absolutely, she's a star. She's super, super over with the crowd. She got a good pop, and she's super over on social media as well, and she's an absolute star. No doubt about it. She can be a big, big, big deal for AEW going forward. I think she does have to continue to work on the in-ring style and her in-ring ability, but I think it's something ridiculous. Like, she's been a pro wrestler for she started in 2019. I'm not exaggerating. It's unbelievable, her rise. So she's a big star. It's great to see Anna Jay back, and it's certainly going to be interesting to see how she's involved on Sunday. Could she potentially win that thing with her big match back inside of an AEW ring? Finally, I mentioned that the Women's Battle Royale had been moved to the main show because on the buy-in, we have a new match announced, and that's Orange Cassidy, Chuck Taylor, Wheeler Yuta, and Jurassic Express facing off against Matt Hardy, Private Party, and TH2 in a 10-man tag team match. So we have a new match on the buy-in. I would expect that the crowd gets a pop, so that would mean that Jurassic Express and Best Friends get the victory there, but who knows? Maybe the Hardy Family Office will get the victory there. Nevertheless, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these AEW news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, all things pro wrestling here on the channel, so be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go to the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or having come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.